The New Mexico sun beat down mercilessly on Fort Sumner in the summer of 1871. Eleanor Prescott stood beneath her parasol, watching as the convoy of wagons approached. At 22, she embodied everything a military colonel's daughter should be: poised, educated, and obedient. Her chestnut hair was pinned precisely beneath her hat, her blue dress immaculate despite the constant dust. "Eleanor, come!" Colonel James Prescott called from the veranda. "The prisoners are arriving." 3 weeks earlier, the regiment had engaged with an Apache band near the Gila River. The colonel spoke of it as a victory. 8 warriors captured, to be held until their transfer to a reservation. Today they would arrive, and the colonel insisted she witness what he called the civilization of the savage. "Remember, daughter," the colonel said as they walked toward the gate, "these men attacked a settlement. They killed 2 of our scouts. This is justice." Eleanor nodded automatically, though a question formed in her mind. Whose justice? The prisoners descended one by one from the wagon, chains binding their ankles. Their faces betrayed no emotion, though they must have suffered in the scorching heat. The last man to descend caught Eleanor's attention. Taller than the others, he moved with a fluid grace despite his restraints. His long black hair was tied back, revealing high cheekbones and eyes that seemed to absorb light. "That one's their war chief," Lieutenant Morrison said, following her gaze. "Calls himself Nahuel. Took 3 men to subdue him." The colonel grunted. "He'll learn his place soon enough." As if hearing them, the warrior turned. His eyes met Eleanor's across the parade ground, unflinching, unafraid. No man had ever looked at her so directly before, without the filters of social courtesy or deference to her father's rank. She should have looked away. A proper lady would never maintain eye contact with such a man. Yet Eleanor found herself unable to break the connection until the guards shoved Nahuel forward. "Eleanor," her father's voice cut through her thoughts, "you will return to the house now." That night, from her window, she could see the detention building where they kept the Apache prisoners. Beyond that lay the vast, empty desert beneath a sky brilliant with stars, a freedom so close yet unreachable. The following day, Eleanor found herself walking toward the infirmary with medical supplies. The base doctor had requested assistance, and with several officers' wives ill with summer fever, Eleanor had volunteered. "Miss Prescott," Dr. Abernathy greeted her. "The Apache prisoners need treatment. Several have wounds that are becoming infected in this heat." Eleanor froze. "Surely one of the orderlies—" "All occupied with the fever cases, I'm afraid. They're restrained, Miss Prescott." "There's no danger." She nodded stiffly and followed him to the back room, where 3 Apache men sat on wooden benches, their hands shackled. The 3rd prisoner was Nahuel. "This one took a bullet to the side," Dr. Abernathy explained. "It needs proper cleaning and redressing." "Hold steady now," the doctor told Nahuel, who didn't flinch as the wound was cleaned. His eyes remained fixed on Eleanor. "Miss," Dr. Abernathy said, "I need to prepare more solution. Press this cloth against the wound until I return." Before she could protest, Eleanor found herself with her hands pressed against Nahuel's side, feeling the heat of his skin through the thin cloth. "You have healing hands," he finally said, his English clear but accented. Eleanor startled. "You speak English?" A slight nod. "I worked with the traders before the soldiers came." "You're in pain," she observed, noticing the tightness around his eyes despite his stoic expression. "Pain is temporary. Freedom is worth more." His words resonated with something buried deep inside her. "Is that what you were fighting for? Freedom?" Nahuel's dark eyes held hers. "What else is worth fighting for?" The question lingered in the air between them, challenging everything she'd been taught about duty and obedience. 2 weeks passed, during which Eleanor found increasingly frequent reasons to visit the infirmary. Dr. Abernathy welcomed her assistance, particularly as several of the Apache prisoners required ongoing care. "Why do you come here?" Nahuel asked one day, his directness catching her off guard. "To help Dr. Abernathy." "No." His dark eyes seemed to see through her practiced composure. "Why do you come?" Eleanor's hands stilled on the bandages she was folding. No one had ever asked her to examine her own motivations. "I don't know," she admitted, the truth surprising even herself. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "That is an honest answer." Their conversation was interrupted by Lieutenant Morrison, who frowned at the sight of Eleanor among the prisoners. "Miss Prescott, the colonel has been looking for you. He wasn't aware you were here." As they walked across the parade ground, the lieutenant spoke of the upcoming officers' ball. Eleanor nodded at appropriate intervals, though her thoughts remained in the detention building. That evening, Colonel Prescott called Eleanor into his study. "Eleanor, Lieutenant Morrison tells me you've been spending time in the infirmary with the Apache prisoners." She clasped her hands to stop them from trembling. "Dr. Abernathy needed help, Father." "That may be, but it's not appropriate for you to interact with those men. They're dangerous savages. They're wounded, Father, and in chains." The colonel's eyes narrowed at her unexpected response. "Since when does my daughter question my judgment?" "I'm not questioning." "You most certainly are." He rose from his desk. "These aren't civilized men, Eleanor. The Apache warrior you seem so interested in, this Nahuel, led an attack that left 2 of our scouts dead." "Were they on Apache land?" The colonel's face flushed with anger. "That is not the point. You are my daughter, and you will conduct yourself accordingly. No more visits to the infirmary." "Yes, Father." The words tasted bitter on her tongue. Later that night, unable to sleep, Eleanor slipped onto her small balcony. In the distance, she could hear singing, low, rhythmic chanting coming from the detention building. When she opened her eyes, she noticed a figure standing in the shadows near the building. Not one of the guards, but someone taller. Somehow she knew it was Nahuel, though it seemed impossible. Had he escaped? Heart racing, Eleanor watched as he raised his face to the sky, arms slightly extended as though embracing the night itself. Then, as though sensing her gaze, he turned toward her balcony. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her hand in greeting. After a long moment, he returned the gesture before melting back into the shadows. The next morning, Eleanor awoke to commotion in the fort. From her window, she could see soldiers running toward the detention building. "One of the Apache prisoners attempted escape during the night," Lieutenant Morrison explained. "The war chief, Nahuel. He'll be placed in solitary confinement and given 20 lashes." "What punishment?" she asked quietly. 20 lashes, Lieutenant Morrison said, "to be administered at noon." "Father, surely—" "That will be all, Eleanor," Colonel Prescott cut her off. "Return to your room. This is no concern of yours." But it was her concern. For the first time in her life, Eleanor Prescott prepared to defy her father's direct order. By 11:30, the fort had assembled for the punishment. Colonel Prescott insisted on these public displays, believing they maintained discipline. In the middle of the parade ground stood a wooden post. Nahuel walked between 4 guards, his hands bound. They secured him to the post, tearing his shirt to expose his back, already marked with old scars. The designated soldier uncoiled the whip. The first lash cracked across Nahuel's back, opening a line of red. He made no sound. By the 5th, blood ran freely down his skin. "Stop!" Eleanor pushed through the crowd. "This is barbaric, Father! He's already wounded! This could kill him!" A murmur rippled through the crowd. Never had the colonel's daughter publicly opposed him. "Remove yourself immediately," Colonel Prescott ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. "I will not." Eleanor stood her ground. "If we treat men like animals, what does that make us?" "Lieutenant Morrison, escort my daughter back to our quarters. Is this your justice, Father? Beating a bound man? Is this the civilization you claim to represent? This man is an enemy combatant who attempted escape after killing American soldiers. He was defending his homeland," Eleanor countered, "as you would defend yours." For a moment, no one moved. The entire fort seemed to hold its breath as father and daughter stood locked in a battle of wills. Finally, Colonel Prescott spoke. 10 lashes instead of 20. And you, daughter, are confined to quarters until further notice." It wasn't a complete victory, but it was something. As she was led away, Eleanor glanced back at Nahuel. Their eyes met briefly, and in his gaze she saw something unexpected. Not gratitude, but recognition. Hours later, as darkness fell, a soft tap at her balcony door startled her. Outside stood Dr. Abernathy. "The Apache prisoner, Nahuel, asked me to give you a message," the doctor said. "He's conscious? How badly is he hurt?" "His back is in poor condition, but he'll survive. He's stronger than most men I've treated." Abernathy hesitated. "Nahuel said to tell you, The eagle cannot live in a cage, nor can the spirit that seeks freedom. What does it mean? I believe he plans another escape attempt, and soon. After the doctor left, Eleanor paced her room. Another escape attempt would surely mean death. Yet she understood his choice with a clarity that surprised her. The eagle cannot live in a cage. Neither could she realized, looking around at the comfortable prison her life had become, a cage of expectations and obedience. Making her decision, Eleanor changed into her riding clothes and packed a small bag. Then she sat at her desk and wrote 2 letters, one to her father and one to Lieutenant Morrison. She would help Nahuel escape, and she would go with him. Using the trellis beneath her balcony, Eleanor descended to the garden. Moving through the shadows, she made her way to the stables and saddled her mare, Penny. The infirmary stood separate from both the main building and the detention center. A single guard dozed outside the door. Through the window, she could see Nahuel lying on one of the beds, his back bandaged. She hesitated. What she planned was treason by military standards. Yet something deeper than reason propelled her forward. A recognition of something kindred, a shared longing for freedom. Eleanor approached the sleeping guard. She had brought a small vial of laudanum from her room. Carefully, she tipped a few drops into the guard's canteen, then retreated into the shadows to wait. When the guard succumbed to the drug, she entered the infirmary. Nahuel was awake, his dark eyes reflecting the lamplight. "You came," he said, as though he had been expecting her. "Can you ride?" she asked without preamble. He sat up with effort, wincing. "Yes, I have a horse. We can take the eastern trail through the ravine." Nahuel studied her face. "Why would you do this? Leave your people for an Apache warrior?" Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "They stopped being my people the moment they tied you to that post." He nodded, understanding what she couldn't fully articulate, that in that moment of defiance, she had claimed her own identity. "There will be no going back," he warned. "I know. I've made my choice." Together, they slipped out of the infirmary. Eleanor led the way to where she had tethered Penny. With effort, Nahuel mounted, then extended his hand to help Eleanor up behind him. As they rode away from Fort Sumner, Eleanor felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. Behind them lay everything familiar: security, comfort, the weight of her father's expectations. Ahead lay uncertainty, danger, and the vast, untamed territory of a life chosen rather than assigned. Dawn broke over the New Mexico desert, painting the landscape in shades of amber and gold. Eleanor and Nahuel had ridden through the night, following game trails and dry creek beds to avoid leaving tracks. "The colonel will send search parties in all directions," Eleanor said, offering Nahuel water from her canteen. "Not for me," Nahuel replied. "For you." The truth of his words hung between them. Her father might have eventually abandoned the search for an escaped Apache prisoner, but he would never stop looking for his only daughter. They continued their journey, the terrain growing increasingly rugged. By midday, the heat had become oppressive. Nahuel's wounds clearly caused him pain with each movement of the horse. "There," he said suddenly, pointing to a cluster of cottonwood trees. "Water." They drank deeply from the small spring. Nahuel examined the surrounding terrain with the eyes of a man who had spent his life reading the land. "Soldiers," he said, pointing to dust on the horizon. "At least 6 riders. They've found our trail." "Not yet, but they will." Nahuel's expression was grim. "We must separate." "No!" The word burst from her with unexpected force. "I didn't leave everything behind to be left at the first sign of danger. We stay together." "Together, then," he agreed. "But we must move quickly and leave false trails." By nightfall, they had reached the foothills of the mountains. In the distance, they could see the campfires of their pursuers, multiple groups now, spread across the terrain. They found shelter in a shallow cave. Eleanor tended to Nahuel's back, cleaning the wounds. His skin was hot to the touch. "You have fever," she said, concern evident in her voice. "It will pass." But the tightness around his eyes betrayed his discomfort. As she worked, her fingers traced the pattern of old scars that crossed his back. "The reservation agents," he explained. "When I was younger, before I escaped and returned to my people." She hesitated, then asked, "Why were you fighting the soldiers? Your band was small. You must have known you couldn't win." Nahuel was silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and intense. There are some things worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible. My father taught me that before he died at the hands of bluecoats. He turned to face her. What about you, Eleanor Prescott? What are you fighting for? Freedom, she said simply. The same as you. Something passed between them in that moment. Understanding, recognition, a bridge across the vast differences of their lives and cultures. They woke the next morning to voices. Soldiers, close by. Must have gone this way, Lieutenant. The tracker found signs near the spring. The colonel wants his daughter found by nightfall. And the Apache? Shoot on sight. Those are the colonel's orders. Eleanor's blood ran cold. She looked at Nahuel, whose expression remained impassive, though she knew he had heard every word. They waited until midday before venturing out. By the third day of travel, their situation had grown desperate. Their water was nearly gone, and Nahuel's fever had worsened. We're close, he insisted when Eleanor suggested they rest. Beyond the next ridge. The canyon, when they finally reached it, took Eleanor's breath away. Nestled between towering red rock walls was a hidden valley with a clear stream. In the shelter of the cliff face stood several traditional Apache wickiups. An elderly woman stepped forward, her face deeply lined, her bearing proud. She spoke to Nahuel in Apache, her tone questioning. This is Nitika, Nahuel explained. My grandmother. She asks why you have come with me. Eleanor dismounted, legs trembling with exhaustion. She faced the old woman directly. I have left my father's house to follow my heart, she said simply. I seek freedom, as your people do. Nitika studied her for a long moment, then took her hand, speaking softly. She says you have the spirit of the eagle in a dove's body, Nahuel translated. She welcomes you. That night, as Nahuel rested under his grandmother's care, Eleanor sat by the stream, watching the sunset paint the canyon walls in brilliant orange and crimson. You are thinking deep thoughts, Nahuel said, appearing beside her. I was thinking that I've never seen anything as beautiful as this canyon, she replied. It is beautiful, but it is not safe. Not for long. The army knows of these hiding places. Then where? Mexico, perhaps. Beyond the border, the bluecoats cannot follow officially. He looked at her intently. But that is a hard journey, Eleanor, and there would be no returning. I made my choice when I left the fort, she said firmly. I won't go back. They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell. When Nahuel kissed her, it was like nothing she had ever imagined in her sheltered life. Not the proper, restrained courtship she had been taught to expect, but something wild and true. Their peace was shattered 2 weeks later when a young boy came running into the camp. Soldiers, he gasped in Apache, the word needing no translation. Nahuel conferred quickly with the elders before returning to Eleanor. A full company. They must have found our trail. Your father leads them. We must go, she insisted. No. Nahuel's voice was firm. If we flee, they will hunt down everyone here. I must surrender myself. No! The word tore from her throat. They'll kill you! Perhaps, but it will give the others time to escape. Eleanor shook her head fiercely. I won't leave you. There must be another way. Her mind raced. I'll go to him. My father. Alone. He will take you back to the fort and hang me anyway. Not if I make him understand. Even as she said it, Eleanor knew how unlikely it was. He's still my father. He loves me in his way. It is too dangerous. It's our only chance. Trust me, as I trusted you. After a long moment, Nahuel nodded. But I go with you. They'll shoot you on sight. Not if I go as your prisoner. The plan formed quickly. Eleanor would ride to meet her father's column, leading Nahuel as though she had captured him. They heard the military column before they saw it. Eleanor took a deep breath, straightening her spine. One last performance as the colonel's daughter. They rounded a bend in the canyon to face a line of mounted soldiers, rifles raised. At their center sat Colonel Prescott, his face like thunder. Hold your fire, Eleanor called out. I have taken this prisoner myself and claim the right to determine his fate. Eleanor. Her name in her father's voice was like the crack of a whip. Step away from the savage, now. I will speak with you, father, alone. This is not a negotiation. You will return to the fort immediately, and this criminal will face military justice. No. The single word hung in the air between them. I am no longer yours to command. You have been corrupted by this savage. God knows what he's done to you. He has shown me what freedom means, Eleanor interrupted. Something you never did. Colonel Prescott dismounted. Secure the prisoner. I will speak with my daughter. As soldiers moved to take Nahuel, Eleanor positioned herself between them. No, he stays with me. The colonel's patience visibly snapped. This is absurd. The man is an enemy of the United States. A murderer. He is the man I love, Eleanor declared, her voice ringing through the canyon. A shocked silence fell over the assembled soldiers. The colonel stared at his daughter as though seeing a stranger. You cannot mean that, he said finally, his voice dangerously quiet. I do. Eleanor dismounted, moving to stand beside Nahuel. With deliberate care, she untied his hands. And if you want me to return willingly, you will guarantee his safety and freedom. That is impossible. Then I remain with him, she said simply. In freedom or in death. Nahuel spoke for the first time, his voice carrying to all present. Colonel Prescott, I have fought your soldiers because they came to take our land. I have killed in defense of my people, as you have killed in defense of yours. He stood tall despite his injuries. But I have never harmed your daughter. I would die before allowing that to happen. Father, Eleanor stepped forward. Look at me. Truly look. I am not the obedient child you remember. I have changed. I have chosen my path. She gestured to the soldiers around them. You can force me to return at gunpoint. You can imprison or kill the man I love, but you will never again have your dutiful daughter. That woman no longer exists. Something in her words seemed to reach the colonel. He studied her face. The sun-darkened skin, the new confidence in her bearing, the unwavering determination in her eyes. You would choose him over your family? Over everything I've worked to give you? I choose freedom, she replied. And love. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, to everyone's astonishment, Colonel Prescott removed his hat and ran a hand through his gray hair. You are so like your mother, he said quietly. She had the same fire in her eyes when she believed in something. He replaced his hat, his military bearing returning. Lieutenant Morrison. Sir? The young officer snapped to attention. Record in the official report that the Apache prisoner known as Nahuel perished during pursuit in the mountains. Body unrecoverable. A murmur of surprise ran through the soldiers. Morrison looked stunned. Sir, regulations require... I am well aware of regulations, Lieutenant. The colonel cut him off. The report will state that my daughter was found suffering from exposure and confusion. She will be returning east on the next available transport to recover with relatives. Eleanor could scarcely believe what she was hearing. Why? Because I lost your mother to fever. I will not lose you to my own stubbornness. He straightened, addressing Nahuel directly. You will take her far from here. Mexico, perhaps. She must never return to any territory under United States jurisdiction. Is that understood? Nahuel nodded solemnly. You have my word. No goodbyes, the colonel said. For my own conscience, it is better this way. He turned back to his men. We return to the fort, now. The Apache escaped into the high country. The search is futile. As the soldiers withdrew, Lieutenant Morrison approached Eleanor one last time. Miss Prescott, please reconsider. This life, it isn't what you deserve. She smiled gently. Perhaps it's exactly what I deserve, Lieutenant. A life of my own choosing. The colonel had already mounted, his back deliberately turned. Eleanor watched him, knowing this would be the last time she ever saw her father. As the soldiers disappeared around the bend, Nahuel took her hand. Your father is a more complex man than I believed. Yes, she agreed softly. As are we all. They stood together at the mouth of the canyon. Behind them lay the hidden paths to the higher canyons where Nitika and the others waited. Beyond that, the long journey south to Mexico and a future neither of them could have imagined months before. Are you certain? Nahuel asked, giving her one last chance to reconsider. Eleanor turned to him, framing his face between her hands, the face that had become, against all odds and expectations, the center of her world. I have never been more certain of anything, she said, and kissed him beneath the vast New Mexico sky. a kiss witnessed only by the ancient rocks and the soaring eagles, a kiss that defied armies and borders and the rigid boundaries between worlds. 3 months later, in a small village in northern Mexico, Eleanor stood outside the adobe house she and Nahuel had built with their own hands. Her belly had just begun to swell with new life, a child who would know both worlds, who would carry forward the courage of its parents. In the distance, Nahuel was returning from hunting, his silhouette familiar and beloved against the setting sun. Eleanor smiled, one hand resting protectively over their growing child. No army on earth could have defeated what had grown between them, a love born in the harshest of circumstances, tested by fire and blood, yet emerging stronger for all it had endured. As Nahuel reached her, gathering her into his arms with a tenderness that still amazed her, Eleanor knew they had found something rare and precious, not just freedom from oppression, but freedom to become their truest selves together. Some called it love. Others might call it destiny. But for Eleanor and Nahuel, it was simply the life they had chosen, day by day, heartbeat by heartbeat, beneath the boundless sky of a shared horizon. Thank you so much for watching this story until the end. If Eleanor and Nahuel's journey inspired you, please consider supporting our channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who loves romance and powerful narratives as much as you do. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to keep telling stories filled with love, redemption, and surprising turns. At the end of this video, you'll see a suggestion for another emotional story from our channel. Click and be swept away once more by a world of passion and destiny.